What's the story, Morning Glory? What's the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this review of Married at First Sight, Season 17, Episode 7, Honeymoon Rockier Than the Mountains. Let's get started with Orion and Lauren because they have had probably one of the worst honeymoons in Married at First Sight history. So definitely the top 5. Okay, so they're still at dinner when this episode begins. They're still at dinner. We're continuing from last week, and they're still having the sex conversation where Lauren had confessed to Orion that she has had sex as recently as 2 months ago, and he did not take that very well because in his mind, as soon as you sign up for this process, you need to see yourself as a potentially engaged person, and everybody else should be off limits as you're waiting to find out if you've been matched, etc. So Orion explains further and says that, sex is off the table, but he says it's not just because of the fact that she's had sex recently. He says it's off the table because he wants to take things slow. So she sees this as a cop out and she calls him out on it. She tells him that he's a flip flopper, that he goes back and forth. He's not consistent with what he's saying. And she says that she's very confused now because at first it was like as soon as she said that she had been intimate with somebody else within the past 2 months, he immediately said, well, sex is off the table now. So why would anybody come up with any other conclusion other than sex is off the table because you just found out that she's had sex with somebody else? So now he's trying to say, no, that's not the reason why I said that sex was off the table. He says that I just want us to take things slow. I'm beginning to realize that on Married at First Sight, when the men are saying that they want to take things slow, especially when they are partnered with a woman who is willing to speed it up, they're just unattracted to her. They're just unattracted to her. And, they're going to use this, stupid excuse of wanting to get to know each other because I don't want to sound, archaic and, like a Neanderthal when I say that if a man is attracted and if he's willing, as long as a woman is willing, they're going to go for it. I can't imagine a man being attracted to a woman, having a physical attraction for a woman, and the woman giving him the green light. And he's like, nope, stop, pump your brakes. Let's get to know each other better. I know it happens. It's not completely impossible, but I just don't buy it. Myself, personally, I just don't buy it. So when we have these couples where the women are like showing an attraction towards the man, and the man is saying, I want to take things slow, so let's hold off on sex, he's just not attracted to her. Point blank period. Sometimes you got to call a thing a damn thing. So she says to him that she just wants to have a quiet meal, no talking, because now she's, getting kind of fed up and she's getting offended by the fact that she feels like she's been judged by him. He's been very judgy, very critical of her. So he says to her, well, I'm not good with the quiet. We need to talk and we need to figure this out. And Lauren says, I agree, but just not right now. So Orion tries to apologize with, I'm sorry if you felt, and she shut it all the way down. And she was like, Orion, that's not a real apology. You are too grown, too educated to talk like that to me. So let's stop with the whole, I'm sorry if you felt, because that's not a real apology. So later on, they're in bed and Orion begins the backpedaling, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it that way. I'm not trying to judge you. That's not how I meant it. You took it the wrong way. She's still not buying it. So Lauren says, she holds him to the fire. She's not going to let him off easily at all. I don't know what Lauren does for a living, but girl, you missed your calling as a trial attorney. Because when I tell you Lauren was interrogating him with trying to figure out exactly what did you mean when you said what you said, she was seriously interrogating him. So she missed her calling as a trial attorney or as a homicide detective. She completely missed her calling. So Lauren says, why did that comment make you take sex off the table? And she talks about how she felt really judged by it. He tries to deny that was the reason why he said that, but it is. So he says that I wasn't trying to judge you. And she's like, well, I felt judged. So basically, they just have to agree to disagree because they're not going to be on the same page. She's not going to believe him when he says, I'm not judging you. When he says to her, I didn't take it off the table because of the fact that you've been with someone else within the past 2 months. She's not going to believe that. And he's not going to say anything else other than that. So they basically agreed to disagree. So the next day, Lauren comes back from working out and they decide to have a conversation. Orion seems apologetic. He admits that he did drop the ball, and Lauren admits that he didn't act like a husband and that she didn't feel safe with him. But then she does compliment him and she does uplift him. And she says, even though in that moment you were not acting like my husband, I still see times when you do stand up, when you do shine, and when you do the things that, that do make me feel, like I'm your wife, and that do make me feel good. So they decide to go ahead and they make up, and, she gave him a hug. She told him to come sit next to her, and she was holding him and comforting him. And it's like, okay, that's weird. You're comforting him and holding him, which is a beautiful thing, but he was the one that had completely messed up. But anyways, let's move on. So they decide to have a session with Dr. Pia. So Orion tells Dr. Pia that he feels like he failed Lauren as a husband and made her feel unsafe. Lauren was like, you're being a little bit too hard on yourself. It wasn't that crucial. I understand where the misunderstanding, started or whatever. So she still tries to be very sympathizing with him. Orion mentioned something about her tone was elevated because she was holding him to the fire. She was holding him accountable for the words that he said that made her feel the way she felt. So he said that, there was a moment when I felt like, your tone was a little bit elevated. I did not see her tone being elevated because when someone says an elevated tone, I'm thinking of she got loud, she got disrespectful, she got unruly. I didn't see that at all. She spoke with conviction. And she was tired of the games that he was playing because he was, beating around the bush and backpedaling. And he said what he said, but now he's kind of taking it back. And I really didn't mean that. And that's not what I meant. And you took it the wrong way. So she kind of got frustrated with him and his games. And so she got a little bit stern with him. But I don't think that she was elevated at all. So Lauren says that she's very serious about this process because the whole issue was if she had been with someone within the past 2 months, could this mean that she really wasn't serious about, being matched and finding a husband and really trying to make a marriage work if she's out there wilding out after she found out that she got chosen? So she's telling him and trying to convince him like she's serious about this. She wants to be his wife and she wants this marriage to work. Orion says that he does believe her, that she is sincere about her intentions of being on the show. So after the meeting with Dr. Pia, I guess Lauren was like, so what do we do now? And so Orion says, well, I would just like to have some space. And she was accommodating to that. She didn't take offense to that. She didn't get mad. She's like, okay, if you need space, I have no problem giving you that space. So during the group dinner, Lauren apologizes for her tone and her sense of humor because this was brought up at the group dinner. And Orion tells her that her unintentional joke had he tells us, he didn't talk to the group about this, he tells us in his confessional, he says that her unintentional joke cut really deep and he thinks about it all the time. Like he's still not over it. So I'm beginning to I'm trying to really see it from his point of view as far as when she didn't even say it. Okay, yeah, she did giggle. So that whole scene at the hot tub when they were talking about derogatory terms and he asked her, have you ever used the term redskin? And she was like, seriously, I don't even know what that means. And then she stopped herself and she looked at him because his face was burned from the sun. So he was looking a little bit flushed. He was looking, like his skin had gotten a little bit redder from the sun. So when she looked at his face and she was like, oh, but it was kind of like she almost was trying to say, oh, but I do now. Like when she said, I don't even know where that term came from. And oh, but I do. And then she stopped herself. That whole thing, that little, 5-second little exchange completely derailed the trajectory of this marriage, completely derailed it. And what's so sad is that Lauren felt like they had gotten over it, that they had talked about it. She apologized. She thought that he was over it, but he clearly is not. So he tells the group that her unintentional joke had cut really, really deep, and he thinks about it all the time. So the next day, it's the morning or whatever, and they tell us that the night before they had a very long conversation up until 3 o'clock in the morning talking about that joke. And Orion he says he feels like a minority in his own marriage. And Lauren says that she doesn't even feel like they're married because he's just so offended, and he's like, doesn't want to, I don't know what to say. He doesn't want to be with her anymore. He doesn't even want to be with her anymore because he feels like he's married to this like raging racist who hates all indigenous people. And I don't know how else to say it because because I'm a minority. And I've experienced, derogatory remarks, derogatory racist behavior, etc. So I'm trying to put myself in his shoes, and I'm trying to pull up situations that I've been in where I felt like the way he's feeling. And I just don't think that it was that intentional. I don't think that Lauren has a racist or prejudiced bone in her body. Did she make a poor joke? At the very, very most, she probably made a joke that was insensitive, extremely insensitive. Okay, it was an insensitive joke, but it wasn't intentional. I don't think that she's someone who goes around and sees indigenous people as lesser than, below her, not worthy to be walking among us, not as good as anybody else. I don't think that that's where she's coming from. And he doesn't know her enough to completely say, oh yeah, I don't think that she's prejudiced, or I don't think that she's racist. He doesn't know her enough to make that decision. But what do you want her to do, Orion? What do you expect her to do? So Lauren tells, the next scene that we see is Lauren, I guess she's in the hotel lobby, and she's talking to Claire, and she's extremely very emotional. She's crying, and she's telling Claire that she had overheard Orion say that he felt like she didn't have his back. And that really hurt her feelings because she feels like she's gone above and beyond to prove to him that she does have his back. That after her little snafu, she is trying to make amends, and that she is making him a priority, making his feelings a priority. And she's really trying to make amends with him so that they can get back on track with their marriage. So she's crying and she's boo-hooing. And Lauren says that other than her mom dying, this is probably one of the hardest things that she's ever experienced. And that's saying a lot because we know how Lauren feels about her mom. Orion feels like she attacked his whole entire culture with that joke. So he's taking it as if this girl just said the most offensive joke ever and followed it up with some offensive cartoon drawings or something. I'm just sort of bewildered but I don't want to minimize his feelings. I don't want to minimize what he's going through and how he's feeling, because how he feels is how he feels. But on the other hand, I'm like, Orion, you're kind of putting 20 on 10 about this. Why can't you show her some grace and start over? And forgive her. And then if she does it again, if she tries to make another insensitive joke or say anything else really flippant that you might take offense to, that you might think is racist or whatever, then you know how to move with her from there on. It's like, okay, you made this mistake, but we can move forward. Just like the way that she felt extremely judged by you when you were like, well, if you had sex with somebody else, I don't want to have sex with you. I don't want to touch you. And she decided to, forgive you. She decided to move on and start new with you. Why can't you do the same for her? And I felt like, he was shaming her when he was like, oh, you had sex with somebody else. Well, I don't want nothing to do with you. He was shaming her. He was judging her, but she went ahead and decided to forgive him anyway. I don't know why he can't do the same for her. So Orion is FaceTiming. Now, this is the part where everybody's getting ready to leave. Everybody's packed up their bags and they're waiting for, I'm assuming, the shuttle to take them to the airport. Lauren is among the group. Orion is upstairs back in the room having a session with Pastor Cal. So Orion tells him that Lauren had made this really careless, crude joke. Okay, fine. It was careless. We can call it crude, no problem. He admitted that she did apologize, that her apology did seem sincere. Orion says that he began to feel violated and offended the more and more he thought about it. Orion says that he couldn't accept her apology after that. And Lauren told him that she wanted a divorce, that she was not attracted to him, and that she took her ring off. This is what he tells Pastor Cal, which is true, because she does say that to Claire, that, when she overheard him say that he didn't feel like she had his back, she did kind of spiral out of control, said she wanted to divorce, took her ring off, etc. So Pastor Cal requests to speak with Lauren one-on-one. So Lauren comes up and she does admit that she said the things that he accused her of saying. Yes, I did say that I wanted a divorce because I overheard him say X, Y, and Z. So Pastor Cal said that you taking off your ring and saying that you wanted to get a divorce was just the wrong move. But I understand that you were just reacting from your own pain. Okay, fine. So then Pastor Cal wanted to talk to both of them together. So Orion felt like she had offended him. He says, you've offended my family and that you've offended every single indigenous person around the world. Orion, you're putting 20 on 10. You're putting 20. If this is the most offensive thing that you've ever heard about your culture and your people, then Orion, you have not lived. You have not lived. You have not lived. If this is the most offensive thing that you've ever heard. When she was like, I don't even want to go back to that. If this is the most offensive thing that you have ever heard and you think that it is offending your family and every other indigenous person around the world, you have not lived. You have been extremely, extremely sheltered. Orion says that when they try to talk about the issue, she goes 0 to 100. Lauren says that's not true because we have not tried to talk about it ever since the hot tub or whatever. Me and you have not tried to have conversations about it, and I don't go 0 to 100. She tells Pastor Cal that she's gone on Google to educate herself on acceptable terms and derogatory terms, so she knows what to say, knows not what to say. And Pastor Cal asked Orion, so how do you feel about the fact that she is doing all of this? And Orion was like, it's not enough. She ain't doing enough. Like, what do you want? She doesn't have the capability to go on CNN International and issue out this 3-page apology and try to take accountability on a public forum. She can't do that. Like, what do you want her to do? So he compares what she said to another comment that had been made to him in the past, where someone had called him an apple, red on the outside, white on the inside. Once again, that's very derogatory because I've been called something similar. People used to call me in school. They used to always say that I was an Oreo. So I get it. But it didn't make me want to completely shut down and, if that's the most offensive thing that you've heard, Orion, you've been extremely sheltered. Like I said, you've been very, very sheltered, and you've been very, very lucky that you haven't heard or experienced anything other than that. So Pastor Cal basically asks, so do you want to get a divorce? Like, what are we doing here? And that's where their little segment ended. Orion, if you don't like her, just say so. Just say you don't like her. If you're not attracted to her, you're not feeling her, you're not feeling this, just say so. Don't try to shame her and defame her character by insinuating or alleging that she's racist against indigenous people and that you feel like a minority in your own marriage and that she's offended you, your family, and every indigenous person in the world because you just don't want to be in this marriage with her, that you're just not feeling her. If you're not feeling her, then just say it, because I felt like when she kind of caught him in a lie or caught him contradicting himself with the whole sex comment, he realized, okay, I can't use that. So let me go back to her comment about my people or about my race. Let me go back and use that. I feel like this is a cop-out. And I don't want to demean or minimize how he's feeling, but it's kind of coming off as a cop-out. Like he doesn't. And the funny thing is, these two people are the most woke people on this show as far as race and culture, but their whole marriage is falling apart based on race and culture. That is so crazy to me. They come off as the most accepting people of others, the most open-minded people of any culture. But it seems like they're falling apart based exactly on those things and on those principles. I feel like Orion just doesn't like her. He's just not into her. I don't think he was ever into her, to tell you the truth. If he's willing to be this mean and this unforgiving towards her when she's trying, especially when she's trying so hard to do better, because she could easily be like anybody else who says something out of pocket and be very defensive and try to turn it around and, be very argumentative about it and be like, I'm not racist and how dare you and you don't know anything about me. But no, she listened, she accepted, she received what he was saying. She allowed herself to be educated. She did some education on her own. She sought out more information on her own time to try to learn and be better and to do better. She apologized profusely. I don't like, what else do you want her to do? She wasn't defensive. She wasn't argumentative. She wasn't trying to minimize what she said. I'm pretty sure in her mind she's probably thinking it wasn't that big of a deal, but she's like, okay, it hurt you the way it hurt you. I can't change that. I said what I said. You reacted the way you reacted. You have the right to react that way. So I'm going to take accountability for making you feel the way that I made you feel. What more do you want her to do? If you don't like her, you're not feeling her, be human, Orion, and just say that. It would be so much more accepting if you just say, you know what, I'm just not feeling the romance. I'm just not attracted or whatever. Instead of like trying to paint her off as this, crazy, deranged, insensitive racist. I don't get it. Moving on. Emily and Brennan. Okay, so they're having a conversation. I think they're having breakfast. They're having a conversation about religion. She's Catholic, but willing to convert. He's Jewish. But she's Catholic, but she's a fake Catholic. She says, I don't really follow whatever the traditions of Catholicism. She thinks that Catholicism is a little bit culty. Her words, not mine. And so she's willing to convert. She's okay with the kids being raised Jewish, etc. Speaking of kids, they both want 2 children, a boy and a girl. So while they're playing games and having a good time, it seemed like she made a joke. Okay, this is not the season for these wives making jokes. She made a joke to him about, does he not like to have fun? And he was like, what do you mean? And so she explained herself and said, I thought she'd be a little bit more competitive, but it seems like you're letting me win. And he says, look, I'm just having a good time. I'm not trying to win every game. It's not like that. I'm just here to have a good time. And he took offense to that. He got really offended by that. I don't know if the women on this show this season are just, really, really cruel, or if the men are just really, really sensitive. I don't know what the hell is going on. So he took offense to that. So at the group dinner, they're talking about the status of where they're all at. Emily admits that her sarcasm may not have landed very well with him and that she needs to watch what she says and how she says it, because he's extremely sensitive. She didn't say that, but that's where we're going. So she needs to really watch how she says things. This is going to be explored more next week, but the sex life between Brennan and Emily, the non-existent sex life. Okay. So y'all do remember at their wedding, they both were willing to throw down on their honeymoon night, but it didn't happen. Emily was willing to go. She gave the boy the green light, but he still, we need to take things a little bit, we need to get to know each other better, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So even though it seems like he's liking her a lot, maybe he's just not attracted to her, because he said that he was happy that he was married to someone who did not mind, consummating their marriage on that first night. He told his groomsmen that. And she said she told her girl she's willing to do it. If the feeling is, or if the chemistry is there, she's not going to hold back. But they still haven't done it. They haven't even been really like affectionate with each other at all. So I don't know what's going on there. He may not be attracted to her. Moving on to Cameron and Claire. Claire says that the attraction between them is growing, which is good. Cameron has some ear pain because he went too deep into the ocean, and I guess his ear popped. He got an ear infection or something. So he had to go see a doctor. You know, when you have like an earache or anything like that, it can really ruin your day. He could not sleep at all because of the pressure or the infection in his ear. So he goes to see a doctor. He gets some antibiotics, and so he's not there when the group dinner, like the first half of the group dinner, he's not there, but he eventually shows up, and he shows up with the biggest bouquet of flowers I've ever seen in my life. It's like he bought every single flower in the flower shop, and so he brought that for Claire, which was really, really, really sweet. And yes, Cameron does feel better. Moving on to Becca and Austin. So over breakfast, Becca wanted to talk about religion, but he didn't. He was like, no, this is not the time for that. Okay. So I thought he was going to say that he was an atheist and, you know, or whatever, and be offended that they matched him with someone who has some type of faith. But that wasn't the case at all, because later on when they're at the beach, the subject of religion comes up again. And she says that she was raised Jewish, but she's agnostic. And he says he's a plain old Christian. I'm like, okay, so what was the big deal about religion? Like, I didn't get it. I didn't understand. Y'all, I love Becca. I love Becca. I like her a lot. I just don't know if Austin is on the same level as she is. I know he does like her, but I don't know if it's as deep as I don't think his feelings for her are as deep as her feelings for him. At the group dinner, when they're talking about where they're at as far as our relationship goes, she's had a lot to say about how they're getting along. Everything is wonderful. She had a lot to say. He was just like, same. I don't know. Maybe he's not a big talker. Okay. Maybe he's just not a big talker. I don't know. But I kind of was like, ooh, that didn't sit well with me. Not at all. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it on your way out. Please don't forget to rate the video if you like this content, subscribe to my channel, and I'll definitely talk to you later. Bye.